So Daniel, when was the last time we did a group modern people leader session?
So I was actually looking back yesterday, and I want to say it was July 2021. So a little over a year. Yeah.
Wow.
I know it's been a while.
So much so for goals, because I think our 2022 goals, we wanted to do like one of these a month or a few a quarter. So, well, here we are. It's been a while, but super stoked that we're having a group episode, and we got some great guests. I'm excited about this group.
Yeah, me too. Welcome, everybody.
Well, we don't skip out on the traditions that we have on the Modern People Leader, even when we're having group discussions like this and in our group episodes rather. And so let's start things off with good news stories. Does anyone want to kick us off? It's always harder for me than it should be, my good news stories, but
I'll be brave.
like
I'll kick us off.
Cool.
So I went to Barcelona for 5 nights and Rome for 3 nights. So took all of last week off of work.
Wow.
And it was a lot of fun. That was actually my first trip overseas, first time in Europe. So hit, a few of the tourist destinations, got to see Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, got to see the Colosseum, got to see the Vatican, hit a lot of stops in a very short amount of time. And it was a blast. So
what was your, I hate this question, and you probably already have gotten this the last few days, but what was your favorite stop?
Ooh, I want to say Sagrada Familia.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Have you been?
No, I've never been.
So it's pretty crazy. Basically it's like still in progress. They've been building it for, I want to say like 120 years. I could be wrong.
Oh, is this Gaudi's?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so he worked on this the day that he died. And from the outside it looks really fascinating, but when you step inside and you just see like the scale of it, it's beautiful.
Amazing. Well, I'll go next. I'm going to go personal also. This is the second week in a row that I've had my daughters. And so usually, I co-parent, usually have them Thursdays and every other weekend. And the last couple of weeks, just because of personal circumstances, I've had them full weeks. And it's just been awesome, especially at the beginning of the school year, to just see that process kick off and the classes they hate and the ones they love. And my oldest daughter, just everything is so awkward. She's in 7th grade. And it's like, I remember that. Bad news. Good news is it's normal. The bad news is you've got about 4 years of this. So buckle up. So that's my good news.
How you looped middle school into a good news story, I don't know. But that's like some, PhD level stuff.
Maybe the good news is I'm not in middle school.
Maybe, although parenting through middle school, being in middle school, I would never want to repeat either. But I'll go next since I'm talking. And since you brought up kids, all of my good news is personal, but I had this really wonderful conversation with my stepson today. And he's 25. And so I've been lucky enough to be in his life since he was 8. And so having a relationship with an adult child is special. And every relationship has a lot of choice. And when you're a step parent, there's a lot of choice on all sides. And I'm always lucky that he chooses a relationship with me because he's taught me so much. And so that was the biggest good news story. So I love you. He's not going to listen to this, please. But there's that. And then there's the cherry on top, which is we have our company wellness day this Friday. So we're off.
Nice. Short week.
Personal, professional, but it's all the same, one body.
The wellness day sounds lovely. I can jump in next, and since we're on the kids path, I'm on the other end of the spectrum. So good news, my daughter starts kindergarten next week. So we've officially reached school age. She dresses herself, all that good stuff. And really, we're both depressed that the summer is over, but the good news is it's because we had such a fabulous, amazing summer. She learned to swim and ride her bike, and we've just had such a really great time. So excited to see her continue to learn and grow.
Good stuff. I'm feeling good already. These good news stories. So I'm the last one. Actually, for those who listened to my first episode on this, I think I mentioned adoption in my good news story, and it's still good news. So for those who know me or have listened to podcasts, I'm an adoptive father. And recently there was an article that got published about kind of our story and his birth mom's story. Just an amazing story. It's just such a privilege to be a part of the open adoption that we're a part of. And some of the stories on the back end of that, of how people have been touched, and it's really broken down some barriers and in some wild ways that we really never anticipated. We just continue to see this story give and really bless people. And so I try to stay in a posture of gratitude. It's really an amazing journey. So we've got quite the parenting landscape on this call. I know to go to Valerie for some tips on parenting through middle school when I get there. Looking forward to it.
Oh, I don't know if you want my advice, but I did learn you cannot reformat someone else's hard drive. That I learned.
There you go. That's it.
Yes. You remind me of, have you ever listened to Ian Cron? Darren?
I have not.
Oh, okay. I'm seeing some recommendations. You have that voice and the vibe. Sorry, brothers. Y'all know how I am. Okay.
No, great voice.
All
I
good.
agree. Yeah. Great podcast voice. All right. So for everybody listening, we probably should have done this at the top of the episode, but we have Darren Murph from GitLab. We have Valerie Jackson from Zuora, and then Hallie Bregman, who formerly was a chief people officer and head of people analytics at PTC, and now has her own company. So we're very happy to have all of them here today. And we have a few topics we want to dive into, but before we do that, is there anything that's maybe top of mind for anybody that you want to discuss first?
I don't mind throwing something out there, and it's something I've been wrestling with, and the, I guess, open-minded side of me has been wrestling with the, I guess, more old school side of me, in that, there's been a ton of press on quiet quitting. First, it was quiet quitting.
I knew you were going there.
Yeah. First it was quiet quitting. And then shortly thereafter, like, I feel like within 24 hours, 36 hours of quiet quitting, a new kind of marketing or like theme popped up of quiet firing. And my topic that I just want to put out there is, are these new concepts, or are these just really old existing concepts and constructs that have been renamed and rebranded on TikTok? I'm just curious. And I've even seen some LinkedIn feed activity today on the topic. And I'm not sure it's like a totally polarizing topic, but I think people tend to have their views. And so I'm just curious to get this group's thoughts. Quiet quitting, quiet firing. Are these new concepts or just rebranding of things that have always been here?
I'll start with this, Stephen. This brings to mind a moment in our podcast prior where I told you that going forward, workplace culture would largely be built outside of the workplace. And I think this is a part of that coming true. Like, why are these things happening? Why are they coming to light? Because people are realizing that life outside of those walls, it's something they can design. There's agency, there's autonomy, there's richness in it. And what people are realizing is that everyone has I call it a purpose portfolio. And work is one stock or equity in that portfolio. But if you only invest in one thing, it's overweighted. And people are realizing that they really need to invest in other things that make up their purpose portfolio. And I don't think it's any surprise that these terms are coming to light right as these mandated return to office structures are happening. This is the tension you feel is the institutional power that has shifted away from the entity and to the people. They're not going to relinquish that. And there's been a lot of epiphanies and aha moments over the past 2 years that have made people realize that they're more than their work. Their identity is more than their work. The terminology it's a bit negative, I would say. It's kind of designed for clicks. But if you look one level deeper, this is a very human discussion on what is work's role in our life. And for every person in different seasons of life, that ratio is going to be different for individuals. And I think it's fantastic that globally we're having this discussion, because I think for too long it's been squashed, and you kind of check that part of you at the door.
I love the portfolio, right, of piece. I think that's like so spot on, and how the control, like this really does exemplify how the control has been passed over to the employee. And I don't think this is a bad thing, right? I think if you think about quiet quitting and kind of setting boundaries for yourself, I'm no longer pulling an 80-hour week. We've been talking about burnout over the last year extensively, and folks are done, right? Especially those of us in the HR space. But broadly, after a couple of years of pandemic, and again, the push-pull between, do we go back to the office? Do we not go back to the office? And just working inconsistent hours, people are really looking for a little bit more boundary in their life. So I think there's a fine line between quiet quitting and kind of setting those boundaries and really being ready to actually leave, and perhaps a opportunity area to engage an employee who has quietly quit, but still can be re-engaged and connected to the workplace, but without having to put in 60, 80 hours a week. So
I agree with a lot of what both of y'all said. I don't think they're new concepts. I definitely think that the terminology is new. I'm here for alliteration. Okay, so I do love the QQ, but I'm not on TikTok. I do know that anything on TikTok has to be pithy and it's got to grab people, right? So I get where they're coming from with that respect. I'm 1000% behind Darren's point. See, even my accent's coming out. When the Georgia comes out, you know, like I'm really passionate.
I love the Georgia, by the way. Give me more Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, you got her now. So the point of bringing our wholeness to work, being full, whole humans who are working in whatever space, that's sphere and space put together, happens to be, right? Like, yes, we can't put ourselves back in the box. A. B, I totally, when I think of the quiet quitting concept, which is sort of doing what you were hired to do, shall we say it? I mean, like, is it really just what you were hired to do? Because that shouldn't be a bad thing. I think it speaks to the unspoken expectations that have been heaped upon workers. But we'll come back to that. The burnout that Hallie mentioned, as someone who has recovered from burnout, knock on wood, prevention is everything. You know, there are three components of like the medical condition of burnout. What are they? Exhaustion, cynicism, and inefficacy. Right. And if you need to pull back from what you're doing because you're exhausted and you need to start charging those batteries, or you've lost belief in what you're doing and you need to find a way to recapture it, or you're like, I'm not as good at this anymore, and I need to reassess or recalibrate. And if you need to lean back to give yourself the time and space to do that in healthy ways, to derive or devise healthy solutions, I'm not mad at that at all. Now, quiet firing is also not new. Anyone who's familiar with the term constructive dismissal or getting pushed out, getting frozen out, it's existed for a while. And I think both of these topics have one huge thing in common, which is unspoken things, expectations, dynamics, needs, wants, challenges. Yeah, I could go on.
I'm with you. Valerie. For me, the way that I'm organizing this is quiet quitting really is the newly branded term for disengaged employee that is putting in low to no discretionary effort above and beyond like the core, the basics of the job. And we've known about that. That's been a thing that we've, all of the engagement tools, all the employee listening tools kind of sprung out of, well, how do we tap into that and reactivate an employee to be actively engaged and to maximize discretionary effort? And for me, quiet firing is the newly branded term for toxic management that doesn't have an employee first culture, right? They're doing things by a playbook that's driven by revenue and, bottom lines. And that's why a lot of private equity firms, like, these are typical tactics. Like, we're going to marginalize you, and then you're going to resign, forfeit your equity, and yada, yada, yada. And that's just like one very specific use case. But to me, these are things that have existed. I do, Darren, man, you nailed it up front. I really, what you mentioned, where this is a conflict, a tension in this new way of working. Like, I agree with that also. I think that this is a way of employees expressing that there's some BS, when there's BS and the culture isn't right and there are unreal expectations or whatever it may be that's driving quiet quitting, that they're trying to get control back. And I think that is like and we talked about, Daniel and I talked about this in the last couple of episodes, like, so much of this to me really comes down to who in the power dynamic, who has control. Is it the old school company exerting control, or can employees continue this trend where the pendulum has swung into the employees' side of the equation in terms of the power dynamic? And so those are the things that come up for me. But Daniel, I think you were about to share something and I just jumped in.
No, I was just going to say, I feel like it comes down to the question of what is the unspoken expectation for employees, and like what, just thinking about the purpose portfolio, like how much should we be expecting employees to invest into the work portion of that portfolio? And I don't know the answer, but I feel like that's the question.
I also think there's a piece of this that is around feedback, right? So if I feel like I can't give feedback and be supported to my manager and my team to appropriately shift my workload in a way that either makes me more engaged, doing more work that I like, or setting more boundaries so I can be more efficient in the work that I do, so removing blockers, I think that is what is missing in quiet quitting, right? It's one thing for you to set the boundaries. It's another thing for you to do it without feeling like you can say something. I think the reverse with the quiet firing piece is actually much more detrimental, in that you have a manager who feels like they can't give feedback, direct, constructive feedback, radical candor, care personally, challenge directly, right? That might ultimately lead to the employee needing to move out of the organization or the role, but you need to be direct about that. So the idea of, pushing someone out, I think sometimes can be a sign of a manager that needs to learn how to give feedback much more directly.
Stephen, I heard an amazing antidote to this, which is loud retention.
I think I saw that also.
Which I love. So what is loud retention? It's the institution, it's the company recognizing that the contract between employee and employer has changed because the dynamic of how work plays into our life has changed massively. Work is something that you look forward to, that you want to invest in. It's a part of your portfolio if the conditions are aligned, if your values aligned. And I think the tension that we talked about, a lot of that is organizations grappling with, how do we create a better workplace? It's no longer enough to be an option for people. It's got to be more than that. And that's a new dynamic for people leaders who are used to people just showing up because they don't have any other choice. And they kind of put that personal desire to have meaning in the work aside. I think what you're seeing is people want the meaning in the work. And for workplaces that provide that, they're happy to be engaged.
Yes. And I also think that this has a lot of, and we're all sitting, I believe, in the United States right now. So I'll say this has a lot of US cultural overtones to it, where, at least in my experience, having lived most of my life in the US, I feel like there is present tense, a lot of correlation for some people between work and identity, work and inherent worth and value. And I have worked with, and family members with people from other countries and cultures where work itself, for some people, is connected with identity. With others, it's connected with the means to enjoy life. With others, it's connected with learning and exploration. And so I think that we're now seeing people who are resisting the unspoken correlation between title and identity, or role and value, inherent value as a human, and are now saying, you know what, I do this, I am not that. So what else, who else am I? And that is huge for shifting control, for shifting power, for shifting influence, for shifting outcomes, for shifting mindsets. Because I agree with you, it's almost like the next revolution, the worker revolution, right? Like, who has the power, who has the voice? It's not just at work, it's also in society. And I think that there is a lot of power in unified voices, often for good, sometimes not. But that's, I think, an element of it that I have seen be really detrimental. And I feel like I'm seeing some people break away from it or explore breaking away from it, which I think is cool to see.
Valerie. Oh, go ahead, Darren.
This is the workplace's red pill moment, if I can throw it all the way back to the Matrix. So COVID has given everyone this opportunity to ingest the red pill, and it exposes the system. And when the system is exposed, you see all sorts of things happening, and a lot of those things are happening.
I was kind of reacting to one of the things you said, Valerie, which is, some people it is, a livelihood, and some people it is a source of learning and growth, and some people, and what I was hearing there was, gosh, it's very personal, right? And there's really different profiles of people. And one of the things that irks me the most is a one-size-fits-all approach. And I think that is what a lot of organizations have taken in this response to the pandemic. Okay, everybody now must, or most people now must come back in a hybrid way, or everybody's now remote. And you're like, but I actually wanted to go to, I happen to be one of the people who wants to go into the office a couple days a week. And like, now my company's got no office. So I'm stuck sitting in my, my guest room over here, and with my little dinky computer, whatever it is. And so I think there's a lot of work. Quiet quitting might apply to some people, but that concept might not make sense for others. They might disengage in other ways. And so for organizations to kind of think about like how they step up in response, I think they need to think about what that looks like for different personas.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about it as like organizations looking at different personas. So, just this past week when I was in Barcelona, we were staying with a couple of friends, and they were there for the entire summer. They live in Austin, but they wanted to spend their summer in Barcelona, and they were out there with 5 or 6 other people, all from the US. And one of the people they're with ended up dating this woman from Barcelona. And for her day job, she's a fitness instructor, and she lives with her family. And for her, work is a means to an end. Like, she just wants to make enough money to do the things that she's passionate about. She's very passionate about cycling. And I was having a conversation with one of our friends about this, and she was like, yeah, like, I feel like she could do so much more. But, it's like the classic Spanish girl, like they just want to make enough money. It's like a means to an end. It's not really their passion. And my response was like, well, what's wrong with that? Like, what if that's what they want to do? So to your point, for some people, they are going to continue wrapping their identity in their work, and that's okay if that's what makes them happy. For others, maybe they have found passions outside of work that they want to invest more time in, and that's also okay. So, for organizations, how do you figure out, like you said, not a one size fits all approach, but how can we make all of these personas happy? And how do we identify these personas? I don't know if you just having a conversation when they start, like an honest conversation where they tell you straight up, like, I am passionate about this work, but this isn't my entire life. I don't know. Like, I don't know the answer, but I'll just stop talking there.
Yeah, and I don't have an answer either. It's just such a fascinating conversation and topic. And I just, going back to Darren, your comment about the red pill, I immediately, it made me think about this. So I over the last 7 years, I've gotten really into meditation and, being intentional about practices like yoga, etc. And early in my journey, I was introduced to a book called Awakening. Awakening, yeah, Awareness. Excuse me, Awareness by someone, an author named Anthony DeMello, and he was like a former Jesuit priest turned kind of spiritual guru type of guy. And one of my takeaways from this book, I won't go into the book because it's very dense and open for interpretation. But my takeaway, what hit me was there are moments in life where you awaken to a new reality. You take the red pill, right? And you're like, oh, wow, this is actually, these institutions and these things are different to what I thought. And once you awaken, or once you get this awareness, it causes, it's painful. It's painful once you become aware to all this, because you can't quiet these thoughts or this new perspective that you have. And in addition, when you try to go back, if you try to like become unaware, so long as you're in the unaware state, it's also creates pain for you. And I feel like it's just a reflection of kind of what's going on today. To your point, I think a lot of people have taken the red pill and they've become aware, and the institutions, the companies are like, no, that, it's okay, just go back to what, the way you were, observing and realizing things before. And that exchange is just not going well right now. And I think that it's like the more companies are trying to like go back to the old ways, the more the workforce, whatever you want to call that, that's the source of things like quiet quitting. They're like, no, we know what you're doing. And, here's this kind of construct that we want to talk about, that we're going to put out there and we're going to make viral. And so I don't know if that made sense to you guys, but that's kind of immediately what popped into my head. And I think that's going to be a source of a lot of angst and a lot of frustration and challenges as we kind of work through to the new way of working. So anyhow, I think we could take the entire time talking about this topic. And I know there are a couple of other things that, given what you guys do, that we want to get your thoughts on. And so I'm going to, unless there are any kind of, really anything important that you want to voice on this topic, I'm going to shift to the other topic we wanted to cover today. So the other thing that I wanted to cover today personally, and that Daniel and I rather wanted to get into, was still relating to kind of the hybrid remote setting that most companies are operating in, but really focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And really, I think we've talked a lot on the Modern People Leader. We've had a lot of epiphanies around psychological safety, belonging, what is the modern view and take on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so, I'm not going to rehash all of that. I encourage our listeners to go back to some of the other episodes. And so I'm going to specifically jump into how remote working has it made diversity, equity, and inclusion harder or easier in the workplace? And I know I have a view that it's changed it. And so I'm just curious to get your thoughts on the topic.
I have a perhaps polarizing opinion here, but I would say we don't know because we have not measured. And I think this is a soapbox I stand on a lot, but with so many new hybrid work, remote work policies coming out, folks have kind of picked their stance. But what we don't really know is how well they are working. And Darren, I'd love to get some of your thoughts here, because I'm sure you've seen more of the research than I on this. But we don't know how well whether they're successful for an organization, which means we can't say that they are more successful or less successful for particular historically marginalized groups. So it's hard to say this is working because we're seeing more collaboration, right? That is our target. And therefore proximity bias becomes a much more important piece of it, as opposed to this is working because we all get more focus time, where proximity bias is no longer the primary outcome. So I think there's different pieces of this that if we're more intentional about the policies we set and the measurement we put in place, will help us gain visibility into how it impacts DEI. But I don't think we're there yet.
I love that's where Hallie started. Love. Because I also love data. And I can say that we actually have been measuring. Well, we never stop measuring. It's just, what are we measuring, right? What are we looking for and expecting to see and are surprised by? So I actually started measuring promotion velocity in companies before the pandemic, comparing and contrasting among other groups, office assigned and remote assigned employees. And this is pre-COVID. I saw literally a 2x length of time for remote assigned employees to be promoted to first-time manager versus office assigned employees in one of my companies. Okay. Now, again, this is.
Oh, wait. Just to make sure I understand, Valerie. So you're saying for the remote employees, it took twice as long for them to get promoted than in office
company
at that
to
company.
A first level manager. Correct.
Interesting.
Yes, based on the data. And data are only as good as our systems and our inputs, right? And how we're perceiving them. So this is ages ago, right? Pre-COVID, but I could at least say now we have something to demonstrate the real impacts of, right? What we're calling proximity bias. And it's also sometimes how good are you just managing your team and connecting with your colleagues, whether you're sitting down the hall or across the country. But now that we are in what I'm calling middle and near end COVID, we have many of us, I'm at a tech company, right? We've got 2 years of working, let's call it remotely. We've always been globally distributed and we've always had approaching 20%, maybe 15% remote, but now literally half of our company is choosing not to work in offices either ever or more than a couple days a week. And what we did measure, and at this company where I've only been for about 1.5 years, we're new on our journey. I'm the first of my kind. So I'm not diving into the deep end yet on analytics, but measuring a sense of belonging, measuring psych safety on teams, measuring inclusion, measuring a number of different elements of inclusion, we have been doing, and we actually saw many of them increase across the board, in regions, across groups. And it wasn't because, oh, COVID was the great equalizer. COVID is awful and painful, right? People are losing people. People are struggling with illness. People are having to live new lives, if you will, that they didn't plan on living. But what it has done is force us to think differently and try new things. And when I joined my company and I did like what I call like my cultural audit, or just listening my way around the company, I was able to hear certain things that I could attach to COVID as having exacerbated, but not created. You know what I mean? And so solving for those things, we saw improvements. And so it's not a matter of, will things go back to normal? Will things tank? Will things improve? Yes, all the above, because things are always evolving and changing. So just because something has worked for certain groups or certain metrics for the last 6 months or 18 months, doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow or 2 quarters from now. We have to stay nimble and agile and keep looking at what we know to be important to measure, staying open to what the measurements tell us, and stay open to additional solutions and rinse and repeat, right? Like we have to stay agile and resilient and open to what we find. If you don't want to know, then don't measure and don't ask. But definitely don't ask and then don't do anything with it. Talk about losing employee trust and wasting everybody's time. Nobody has free time to waste. We're all tired. Sorry, was that too personal? But come on.
That's good.
Well,
that's good stuff.
Go ahead, Darren. I don't know if you were going to add.
Yeah, I'll set some context first. So I will agree with you, Stephen, that it's changed, it's different. And I'll say that there's never been more opportunity to really build something better than now. There's been a net increase in optionality. That's a great thing. Some of the old ways of working are still there if you want them, but now we have an option to do things differently. So it's a net gain for the workplace, and we can build something better than what we had in the past. The context I want to set here is I view the current frontier of remote work as about geographic independence. So we have largely figured out how to decouple business results that we drive from physical geography and proximity. But the next frontier is way cooler. This is time independence. This is the ability for a workforce to decouple business results from linear time. Now, the difference here is that the first one is focused on the where, and the second one is focused on the how. And so when you look at the lens of what can we do from a DEI perspective, there's a lot more you can do when you're able to focus on the how and not just the where. The where is things like, look, we can hire people in 60 countries. So we get an incredibly rich and diverse array of perspectives poured into our culture and our product, just because we have people on the ground in all of these different cultures living it every day. You look at the people who have been marginalized, those with mobility challenges, military spouses who can't easily port their career as they move around the world, those that might not be particularly, they look a certain way or sound a certain way, introverts who aren't necessarily the loudest voice in the room, but when they are all contributing in a Google Doc in the same size font, finally they have their voice. These are things that are empowered by focusing on the where, but the how opens up a lot more leverage. Well, how do we get to the how? Workforces have to start thinking differently about how work happens. When you start auditing, how do people collaborate? Do people that speak the loudest in a meeting, do they get the most done? Should we do something about that? That's changing the how. That's looking at the tools that you use and the cultural norms and expectations around those, maybe even changing the very values and operating principles on which your company works with now that distributed work is a reality. That shift has the potential to be absolutely massive, and we are in the earliest of innings in the change that will come from that shift.
Totally. And I would say that this is where remote work has helped to elevate the incredible importance of inclusion work, full stop. And what I mean by inclusion work is work that promotes, supports, demonstrates workplaces and teams that demonstrate that the individuals who enter them are valued, are supported, are respected, have a sense of psychological safety, and are inspired to lean in and give their brilliance, right? Every human. Do I gotta say it for every, like every human, okay? No matter how you are, who you are, how you aren't, who you aren't, where you are, where you aren't, how you work, how you don't. Everybody needs to know that I matter. And so much, I'm a D&I practitioner, y'all, like so much of what has been the pedagogy of my field has been rather strict definitions of groupings and focus on them. For me, I approach this through the lens of humanity. Everyone in my workplace, everyone in my ecosystem needs to know that their effort, their genius, their time matters. And this is the opportunity that we have to leverage what Darren just said, next level, like elevating it to how we can build better. I'm not passionate at all. I'm not passionate at all.
I was going to say, so you must love regionally built compensation philosophies, where obviously people who live in big cities are worth more than those who live in remote urban area, or I mean, remote rural areas, right? I'm being sarcastic there.
No,
because,
I know.
Right.
It's
I
fascinating
think
your choice of words, worth more. right?
Worth more, right?
The
Well,
market might be spicier in a place.
Right. Right.
But I wouldn't correlate that with someone's worth. And unfortunately, the market forces us to feel that way.
Right.
The
And
bucket.
I think people feel that way when they feel like, oh, I
Mhm.
live in Montana, and so I am worth less, right? My skills, even though they're the same as that person in San Francisco, they are worth less. And from an inclusion perspective, there's some real complications there, because who are the people who end up living in, again, the more remote places, people with less, economic freedom, people who are tied to families for family care, right? Like there's lots of inequity in who gets to live where from the get-go.
Yeah, I think that this is, you guys have all like blown my mind and made some really, really great points. It boggles my mind why it's so hard for some to see that, like, what at stake, that there is such a huge impact on humanity. Some of the things that we are talking about, the how, just by changing the how, we can make not just work a better place, like literally all facets of our lives globally. Like there's so much upside and potential, but yet we're here getting caught up on terminologies and TikTok, buzzwords, and that's not the real conversation. And but before I forget, I just want to, I'm grateful to each of you that we can have a conversation about what matters most to me. And that's kind of why I wanted to start with the topic that we started with, because I feel like people are focusing on the wrong things here and going back to the how we work and the benefits. I agree with everything you all have shared. I think there's so much upside for us to and such a huge opportunity to be better. And I get excited about the outcomes, but it all seems to come crashing down when I see the next headline of a company forcing their employees to come back into the office, or this like really angry battle or arguments that I'm seeing on LinkedIn about these, what seem to be trivial topics. I know why those conversations are happening, as we discussed earlier, but it's like, guys, I feel like we're missing the bigger picture here.
I think that what you just said reminds me of a layer cake, right? Like everything we're talking about is a layer in the cake. Some people love the icing. Some people like the bottom. Some people like the crust part. Like if you bake a cake in a pan and there's actually a crust, like I think, I'm not a big baker.
It's like the burnt part.
Right, but we need all of the layers to have the cake. We need the big picture thinkers, and we need the folks who are really sweating the spelling of the terminology that we use. And we need the folks who swim in the middle, or exist in the middle. Not everyone can swim. And so maybe you don't have to like cake, but we're all layers of a whole, and we need all the parts.
So I feel like we've touched on this a bit, but what does the next evolution of this work look like? Like, I know we've talked about how moving from the where to focusing on the how, but like, what does this look like in practice? Just curious.
It's gonna look for organizations that fully embrace this, it's not going to look anything like the past. For organizations that really lean into this transition, it is a full-scale re-architecting of all of your operating principles. Almost nothing will stay the same except the name on the side of the proverbial building if you don't have an actual building. You truly could audit every single layer of the organization from, hey, do our values actually work when we can't guarantee that everyone is in the same office? You might have to rewrite those. When things are implicit or implied, you learn things via osmosis. Well, what happens when your company is distributed? You can't learn that by osmosis. So now everything that was implicit must be made explicit. So if you haven't ever had a company handbook before, now you have to literally write the operating manual for how things happen in your organization. Well, what about people in the organization that have never done that? They've spent their 30-year career verbalizing their way through things. and they've never had to communicate in a different medium, in a different way. Well, now the learning and development team is at the tip of the spear, and you're going to have to upskill people on low context communication. Saying these things 5 years ago would have made almost no sense. But that's how stark the difference is, the before times and the after times. And the truth is, you'll be able to judge organizations based on how much energy they're putting into building the future. And the thing that's interesting to me about this energy equation is energy will be spent building a different future or pulling people into the past. It's not that one of those has no energy requirement. They're both hard. Yeah. You might as well exert the energy on building something new versus coercing people to still use the fax machine when it's obvious that email exists now.
What Darren is saying reminds me of a big shift that a number of US-based companies had to undergo when they started to expand into other countries. And because I come from law firms, not tech companies, and they've always been global, some of the stuff Darren was talking about, I was like, whoa, it took me back. Because it was how I had to lean into certain things to weave together an international workforce where everybody was office-based. So those things that Darren mentioned were actually crossing cultural boundaries, right? Or crossing countries. But now it's literally like 5 people who live within the same 20-mile radius who may not go into the same physical structure together. Or maybe it's all of the above. And so I feel like this is a new phase that yet again elevates to our attention what isn't working for those who don't have the most power and the most access to information and the greatest access to decision making. And when we build to solve for those things or to better equalize some of those things where it makes sense, I mean, the sky's the limit. Now, I also think the pendulum's going to swing. I'm just going to say, what did you say, Hallie? You're going to put a controversial or something? I want to say that now.
Polarizing.
Polarizing. Okay. I think that in some cases, for some companies, the pendulum is going to start to swing back in 5 years.
Explain.
Tell me more.
In what way?
Yeah. I think that the strong and in my company, we subscribe to flexibility. Okay. So we are leaning into different ways of working across our global platform. That said, my personal view is that I think that many companies that went fully remote, or let's call digital first hybrid, the pendulum is going to start to swing back in about 5 years, maybe 3 to 5 years, where we're going to start to see more and more uptake in office usage, whether it's an office or a hub, call it what you want. I think we're going to start to see more people working co-located and fewer people working in a true remote fashion. That's just a hunch.
Interesting.
And why is that? Any more you can share?
I'll give you my take on that. Really smart people are going to recognize the opportunity that real estate no longer has that anchor tied around it, where it can only be used as one thing. Now it can be anything you want it to be. So I think we will see a lot of innovation on how do we use space to bring people together? What are some amazing, innovative ways that we can bring people together and give them experiences that they haven't had before? The building is there. And so some really smart people are going to figure out interesting ways to use it, whether that's flying people in from around the world or creating kind of subspaces for people who just so happen to be geographically close. And I think there'll be a crop of new companies or industries that will come out of this. If you look at just the digital tooling that has come to light over the past 2 years, now that there's product market fit for distributed first tools, that same kind of innovation will continue to happen.
And before we run out of time, I have to ask a follow-up question. And that is, what about the company or the mindset of, well, Yeah, that's easy for you guys to say. You work for a high tech company, or you work for whatever industry that's embracing remote or digital first. We're a widget making company, so we can't. There's no way that'll ever work for us.
We're Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, surprising. I mean, and it's like literally JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley are making it work remotely. So what about those guys? But yeah, I think what about those companies out there that are still rooted in the traditional old school, what I'll call old school way? What's the response to those companies?
Companies are really coming together of people, right? You don't have a company if you don't have people. And so there are people who are leading those decisions, who are making those decisions, and probably centering what they know and what they like, right? Or what their customers know and what their customers like. And if the decision makers change, or if the data from the customers changes, those decisions might also change. So I wouldn't look at anything that exists right now as set in stone. It's just a matter of what are folks' motivations for making certain decisions, and maybe they'll change. But sorry, Hallie, I saw you were about to speak.
No, I think the interesting piece here, and responding to something Darren said before also, is like, we're breaking down the how work gets done, but I also think we need to break down the jobs themselves, right? So we're used to working in a physical building, and you said, work gets done because you have people. No, work gets done because you have jobs and people fill those jobs, right? So we have built this whole kind of architecture on the fact that a job is a lane and somebody stays in a lane, right? And so this whole idea of like internal mobility and breaking things down into skills that translate across lanes, right? And then you can think about how a particular piece of work gets done not attached to the job, right? And I think that's when you start to be able to say, okay, how do decisions get made? It may no longer be by a leadership level on the top, that sits across the top of an organization. These, older organizations, Stephen, that you're saying, right? They're going to fall behind because they're inflexible, right? Because they're not keeping up with the kind of modularness of work that people want, right? The gig economy, the remote hybrid, wherever do I want to be, the internal mobility,
the agility,
right? The agility, right? Like that is the employee base taking control back of their lives. And so when an organization doesn't provide that flexibility, and again, not just, geographic flexibility, but actual flexibility kind of across all of the many spectrums, they're not going to be able to keep up with competition in terms of talent attraction, talent retention, and innovation, I think is the biggest one there for me.
Yeah, something that I'm hearing is that companies need flexibility. And I was just thinking about the evolution of work over the last, I don't know, let's say 75 years. It feels like for the most part, work was the same for a really long time. The pandemic hit, and then over the past 3 years, whatever it's been now, there's been this, complete change in how everybody thinks about work. And if we think about the next 10, 15 years, I feel like we're going to have this moment like every 2 or 3 years. Like I feel like every 2 or 3 years, it's going to maybe not completely change or drastically change, but there are going to be changes, and it's going to be, constantly evolving. So for the companies that can't even embrace the changes over the last couple of years, what are they going to do in 4 years when it's something else? So to your point, that the companies that aren't nimble, that aren't flexible, they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, the pandemic certainly accelerated the need to be more flexible, but the pace of innovation, pace of change is so much greater today than it was 75 years ago. The only reason that work was able to stay the same for so long was that, technology didn't exist like it does today. You couldn't communicate. Funny example, but I'm listening to the Hills Rewatch podcast for any of those of you who watched The Hills 15 years ago on MTV. And they're literally talking about how the fact social media didn't exist at the time. So a lot of the episodes they were able to film, right? The secrets couldn't get out. Now, today, you can't keep those secrets. And the same applies for work, right? The same applies to an employer. You treat an employee a particular way, you take a particular stance on it, everybody knows about it immediately. And so you are forced into action in a much more rapid way than you ever have been before. So I do agree that we're going to continue to see work evolve at a much faster pace just because of the tools we have at our disposal.
You're right. It's the tools plus what Darren calls the red pill. How COVID gave everybody the option to take the red pill.
That's real. That's real. And I believe, and I'm going to say it again, that fast forward, there are going to be some organizations, some companies and key industries, and they're going to achieve talent escape velocity. They're going to be so far ahead that it's going to be so hard to catch up, and it's going to be the Blockbuster or Borders moment for a lot of those that hang on to the old way. And it's just, there's going to be one option at that point, and that's like die either slow or fast death. Like you choose the outcome that choose the path, but the outcome is now clear.
All right, so we can either move to the closing questions, or if there's any like closing thoughts anybody wants to make, now's your time to speak. All right,
I've learned a lot. I really appreciate Valerie and Hallie's perspective on this.
Likewise.
Oh, likewise. I mean, I'm now going to go Google which pill was which in the Matrix. But other than that, this has been a blast.
Take the red pill.
I want to take the red pill. Is that the one I want to take? No, I don't want to take.
So
See,
you don't want to take the red pill.
It depends if you like the taste of steak, because I think there's one guy that.
What if I like the taste of truth?
Team red.
Okay.
All the way.
Got it.
Cool. All right. So since we have 3 of you on the call, we thought that rather than doing 4 or 5 rapid fire style questions, we would just limit it to 1. So the question that we have for the group today is, what does it mean to be a modern people leader to you?
I'll start. I think it's being willing and receptive to view everyone as an individual like never before, and not just a single individual. It's actually not that easy. It's an individual that has different seasons of life, and sometimes those seasons are as short as a day or a week. And so maintaining those relationships and truly leading people through what we're going through on the backside of the pandemic, it requires a much deeper relationship and much more intentionality than before. But there are some amazing relationships on the other side of that for leaders that really embrace people as people who are living through seasons and getting to see that as opportunity instead of through the lens of scarcity or fear.
Amen. Let's see. I think of like modern people leader. I separate the terms. And so modern means that you meet today as it is, that you acknowledge and learn from the past as it occurred, and you look forward to the future armed with that knowledge and openness. That as a person, you are on a journey of self-discovery and healing, and that you become a leader not through your own determination, but by the, dare I say, determination of others to follow you, because you inspire them to do so. That to me is a modern people leader.
I think it's an enabler, right? I think our role is to enable people not just to do the work. I think we're used to thinking about enablement as a work-focused thing, but enable people to live their lives in a way that incorporates work, supports them, gives them opportunities to learn and grow. And I think that enablement is done through leveraging agility, people first principles, being data informed, and really leveraging technology. I think that is one of the biggest opportunities in the people space. And it's why we've seen such a big boom in HR tech. Excited to go to the conference in a couple of weeks. Don't know if any of the rest of you will be there, but I do think those are critical skills that people leaders need in order to achieve the goal of enabling their employees to, be healthy, happy people first and employees second, or third or fourth or fifth.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. All righty. So as always, we're going to close it out with one word closes. Does anybody want to go first?
I'm going to strike fast.
Yeah, I could see
my one phrase close is going to be red pill.
Wow. Nah, cool. That's what I was going to say.
I'm going to go with hope. I'm going to go with hope. Yeah, I got I'm very bullish on the future.
I think I'll lean into change. I think, nothing's staying the same, and this conversation certainly illustrates many of the ways we have changed and will continue to change going forward.
All
Yes
right.
to
So
all of that.
yeah. And I'm going to steal something that Darren said. The next frontier is way cooler. All right, guys. Well, this was great. Thank you all for joining and coming back to the Modern People Leader. Maybe
What a way to come back to the group conversations. This has been the highlight. I said this before we joined the call that this was the highlight of my week, and man, has it really been. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun.
It was a blast. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Awesome.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.